Okay, so today we're going to talk about using the y-intercept. And the first thing we're going to use it for is something called slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is when you have an equation that's in the format y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. And m is going to be your slope, and b is going to be our y-intercept. Okay, every single time, slope, y-intercept. So we know what slope is because we talked about that yesterday. It's how steep something is. It's rise over run. Okay, and the y-intercept is the new kind of term, and that's the y-coordinate for the point where your line crosses the y-axis. Okay, so we know that this vertical axis is our y, right? This axis right here is the y-axis. And so where the line crosses that axis, this point right here is called the y-intercept. Okay, and so the equation of this line right here would be y equals negative 3/4 x plus 5. So 5 is where we're starting on the y-intercept, and then the slope is negative 3/4. So think about what we talked about with slope dude yesterday. That's going to go down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And those 2 points are how we graphed the line. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look on this right-hand side, and we're going to identify slope and y-intercept from each of these equations. So if I gave you y equals 6x, the slope is 6, the y-intercept would be 0, right? It's like we're adding a 0 at the end. Okay, there's nothing that we're adding, so it's 0. On number 2, the slope, if it's negative x, that's negative 1, right? So saying negative x is the same thing as negative 1x. So our slope is negative 1, and our y-intercept is negative 4, because that's what we're adding at the end. Subtracting 4 is the same as adding negative 4. On number 3, the slope would be 3, and the y-intercept would be negative 1. Then on number 4, the slope, negative 1, right? It's that negative x. And my y-intercept, what are we adding at the end? Nothing. And then here, the slope would be negative 4/5. That's what's coming in front of x. And the y-intercept is 2. Okay, so graphing using the slope and the y-intercept. So step number 1 is to identify, well, what's the slope and what's the y-intercept? Step 2 is to graph the y-intercept and then follow the slope. Okay, so for example, look at number 6. Okay, so our slope is negative 3 and our y-intercept is 4. So we're going to start on the y-axis at 4 because this y-intercept is 4. And then our slope is negative 3. So if you're confused about how that relates to rise over run, remember if it's a whole number, you just put it over 1. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3 over 1. Down 1, 2, 3 over 1. Down 1, 2, 3 over 1. Then we're going to connect those dots so it has a slope of negative 3 and a y-intercept of 4. On number 7, the y-intercept is negative 2. So I start right down here. And the slope is 3/5. So that means rise 3, run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's talk about taking our slope backwards, right? Because this is only showing half the graph. So if my slope is 3/5, that's positive 3/5. What if I make both of them negative? What's a negative divided by a negative? A positive. So that's the same thing. I could go down 3 and to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and continue my line down that way. So we want to make sure that our line is covering as much of the graph as possible. Okay, on number 6, y equals x. That's like saying y equals 1x plus 0. So my y-intercept is 0. It's going to cross that y-axis right there at 0. My slope is 1, which if I'm trying to write that as a fraction, rise 1, run 1. Okay, and then if I'm trying to extend it back this way, -1, -1. And then this last one, we're going to start at -4. And my slope is 2, and I can write that as 2 over 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. And connect the dots. Okay, so let's look at the next little section, which is writing an equation for a line. Okay, so we know that every single time it's going to be y equals mx plus b. Okay, the y and the x aren't going to change. We're just going to fill in the m and the b. So it says write an equation for a line with a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of -6. So y equals 1/2 x minus 6. Slope of 1/2, y-intercept of -6. Okay, number 9, y equals m x plus b. Number 10, y equals m x plus b. Number 11, y equals m x, and then do I need to write plus 0? I don't. I can if I want to, but I don't have to. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is writing an equation if you're given the graph. Okay, so there's two things that I have to identify. I have to know the slope and I have to know the y-intercept, right, every time. So on this one, the slope dude is going down 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So down 3 over 4. Okay, if this is confusing, then you need to go back and re-watch the slope video from yesterday because that describes how to find this. So if you didn't watch that one, go back and watch it. So it's rise over run. And then B, the y-intercept, is where it crosses the y-axis, and that's at -2. So if I write the equation for this line, it would be y equals -3/4 x minus 2. Okay, because it has a slope of -3 over 4 and a y-intercept of -2. Okay, on this line right here, y equals, the slope is down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. That's -2, and it crosses the y-axis at 1. Okay, let's look at this one right here. Slope dude only moves left to right, going from this point on the left to this point on the right. He's rising 1, 2, 3, 4, and running 1, 2, 3, 4. So if a slope of 4 over 4 is the same as what? 1. So y equals 1x. If you just wrote x, that would be fine as well. And then plus 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's where it's crossing the y-axis. Okay, let's look at this one. So what would be the slope? 0. And where is it crossing this y-axis? At 3. So what's 0 times x? 0. So this one is just y equals 3. The only requirement is that y equals 3. Okay, what did we learn yesterday about vertical ones? What do you think? It's going to be x equals -2. Okay, so remember from yesterday, if it's a horizontal line, it's going to be y equals. If it's a vertical line, it's going to be x equals. Okay, and then this last one, y equals, the slope is down 3 over 2, down 3 over 2, down 3 over 2, and then the y-intercept is -1.